I've always found it quite hard to let go of the past. It's something I think about a lot. My memories, the people I've met, the moments that have passed. I take photos of whatever I can. Recently, I came across an old photo I had taken that I completely forgot existed. That day, I was going around Athens with my friend, where we both lived at the time. We saw some graffiti on a wall that said, "This moment is more precious than you think." After that, we both started to live separate lives, and that was the last time that we saw each other. The photo made me realize that I didn't appreciate the moment enough at the time because I always expected there would be more of it. But eventually, this life was one I had to leave behind to go into a new direction and move to London. I always wondered, what if I had stayed? What would my life have looked like? Did I make the right decision?
I never question myself because there's no point. You can't do what if. It's pointless. You just make the best or go from where you are at that point. You know, you can always change course. You can always change something. If you don't like it, change it. My name's Laurie Harper. I have 2 children. I moved back to England 2 years ago. It's good to be back in England after being away for about 30 years, travelling the world, working around the world. When I worked at Great Ormond Street in London, I'd always wanted to work there because it's considered the best children's hospital in the world in terms of research, you know. So I moved there, I think I was in my early 20s, did my training there, worked in outpatients, and it was a great life, living in central London, working in, you know, with such great doctors. But I woke up and I just felt I need to make a change. I need something else in my life now. And it was such a strong urge. Once upon a time, it had been everything I wanted in terms of my career, but now it wasn't enough. And I thought, there's got to be something else out in the world. And that day I went into the hospital. There's a friend of mine, Claire, and I happened to mention it to her. And she coincidentally had got back from Saudi Arabia the previous year. So that day she gave me the name of the agent that hired nurses for Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Kuwait, you know, Middle Eastern places. So I contacted them, and I think within a week or so, I had left London and was landing in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and I left behind my family, my fiance, and went to start a new life in Jeddah. And that changed everything. Looking back, that's obviously changed the path for the rest of my life.
And can you tell me a bit about your life in Saudi Arabia?
Oh gosh, there's so many memories. Maybe one memory was the first time we went. We used to call it bushwhacking, and that's when you go out into the desert. So you have to remember, in Saudi Arabia, a woman's not allowed to be in a car with a man unless it's her family. But we would all take these jeeps out, which we used to call the Pig. That was the name of the jeep. And we would all go there and kind of travel through the night undercover in this jeep, like about 8 of us in one jeep, and travel for maybe 5 hours and go camping in the middle of the desert. And I remember the first time we camped, it was quite scary. No light pollution, no noise pollution. But being there in the middle of nowhere, looking up at the sky, was incredible. The sky was beautiful, like full of stars, full of stars. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I literally feel like I've died and gone to heaven. I think sometimes, like looking back now, it kind of reminds you, okay, yeah, I've done all right.
Was there ever a moment where you regretted your decision?
Never. Never. I don't think we spend enough time looking back at our memories. I think we forget when we take a photograph, especially from my era, you know, when you take a photograph, you get it developed, you put it in an album, and oh, that was a nice holiday, or that was a nice memory. And then people tend to put them away, and they usually end up in the attic or somewhere, or the shed, and they never get looked at again, you know, and until like people like you come along and say, oh, have you got any memories you'd like to talk about, you know? And it's important to look back as well and, you know, look at the lessons that were learned along the way, how the experiences have shaped you as a person, because our past can and does shape our future in many respects.
Sometimes, even though everything might seem fine in our lives, we get the feeling that something's missing. That it's time to move on and start something new. My photograph reminded me of my life in Greece, a life that I absolutely adored. But had I not left it behind, I never would have discovered the things I love the most now.
I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would ever open a store. It was a big decision to transition from working in an office. I'm Janet.
I'm Cynthia.
The florist. I'm the manager of Janet Edwards Florist, based in Brixton Hill. I met Cynthia at Floristry School in 2008, and we became friends from there. I remember saying to her, "Where do you live?" And she told me where she lived, and it turns out I lived around the corner from her in Peckham at the time. And I went, "Really?" Yeah, so we travelled home on the bus together because we lived around the corner from each other. So that's how we met, really, at Floristry School. At the time, I was working in local government, so I started this off as a hobby. So I loved it so much. Then I went on to college to study my City and Guilds, and then I got made redundant, and I decided, what am I going to do? And I didn't really fancy working for anybody else. And I walked around Brixton and I noticed there was not one florist shop in the vicinity. And when I worked in the council, I used to go and get my flowers at the market and park my flowers in the office and carry on doing my minutes and meetings, etc. And people in the office would ask me to make flowers for them as well. So I was the office florist in a way. And it's something that I'm passionate about. And you know, I could have easily gone back to local government, but I was unhappy, and there's no point in doing a job and you're not happy. You know, Cynthia's been my backbone, really. You know, I've been let down by the people in the business world, but if it wasn't for her, I think I would have given up, because, you know, we've been at our lowest when we weren't even making the rent money in the beginning. And even though I had so-called friends in my life at the time were saying, pack it in, it's not paying you, that drove me even more to do what I did. And I saw my savings frittering down to next to nothing. And there's times I'd be in tears and she would say, come on, let's get all the bills together. And we'd add them all up, and she would lend me the money to pay the rent and the bills. And she'd say, pay me back when you can, you know.
And Cynthia, how did you feel when Janet asked you to work at the store with her?
I feel happy. And she knows that.
How come you asked her to join you?
I had no other choice. No one will work for free. Everything that you go through in life is a learning curve. Every setback is a learning curve, you know, for myself as well and in business. Because sometimes I think I wish I did things a certain way, but sometimes things are mapped out for us already.
It's important to appreciate the moment because you never know when things are about to change in your life. You might make a conscious decision to change something, or just end up in a new direction you didn't predict. I was never enthusiastic about change because I always thought it meant things must end. But maybe that's not all there is to it.